Hello, all. I'm excited to tell you about our first ever open to the public, open invitation Bible Thinks workshop. It'll be here in Holland, Michigan on April 25th in the evening. That's a Friday. And then April 26th, we'll come back all day on Saturday. And we are going to slow jam through Scripture to figure out what it has to say about things that we care about today. So I hope you can join us. Look out. This is just a save the date, so look out for some upcoming RSVP information. But for now, it's April 25th and 26th, Friday evening and Saturday all day here in Holland, Michigan at Hope College. So you went to seminary, right? And
I
then
did.
you got interested in biblical studies. And then
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, you're writing on the New Testament, James, in Genesis. But I'm always interested in why people become interested in the Old Testament, and see
Yeah.
it's so foundational. Because a lot, if you don't follow Hakeem yet, you should. We'll put the social media on this link on this. But you do a lot with the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And so, how did
Yeah.
you get into it?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it was because actually just did a post about this today. That's the funny part. It's because when I first came into the faith, I was instructed, or at least encouraged, like, yo, read the Gospels. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. If I'm supposed to follow this Jesus dude, what did he say? What did he do? And I should pattern my life after that. But then I got confused quickly. I'm like, okay, he said, just as the prophet Isaiah would say, then he would quote. I'm like, what is he talking about? Or he would use certain metaphors, and I'm like, I don't get that. Or he would have certain titles that he would ascribe to himself or that other people would call him. Like he would constantly say, the Son of Man, such and such. Or folks would go, have mercy on me, son of David. I'm like, what does that mean?
Right.
And so I'm going, okay, obviously, I'm 18 at this point. So I'm going, I should probably start from page one to see
Mm-hmm.
what's going on. And, by the time you get to
Yep.
page three, it
Yep.
gets real weird. You're like, there's a talking snake. I don't have categories for this. What's going on, right?
I don't
And
think
then
most Christians are aware of how weird it gets,
it's weird
and
quickly.
it
Like
stays weird for a really long time.
it
Yeah.
doesn't get better in the sense of like, oh, now it makes
Yeah.
sense. No, it doesn't. It's okay. It's okay. So
Excuse me.
you get a talking snake, then you have this tragic moment where a brother murders another because of a sacrificial jealousy, and you're like, what is? Then you
Yeah.
get a flood, and you're like, what
Right.
is happening?
And they're like, "This is the good news."
And they're like, this is good news. You're like, I don't see it. Somebody help me see it. And so I just said, you know what? Let me persevere and try to get through this story. And just like any other collection of literature that I find interesting, you got to give it time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like watching a movie.
Yeah.
If you judge the movie based off the first 15 minutes, you might think it's trash. But if you go, I'm willing to stick it out, you might come to find out, oh no, this is a classic. Okay, I can do that. Gladiator is one of them. Gladiator has a slow burn,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, it
Yep.
takes off. So
Breaking
all of that
Bad. First couple episodes are tough, and then after
yeah,
that, it's just brilliant, right?
is arguably the greatest show ever, right?
I would say so too. Yep.
So there we go. And so I started reading through the Hebrew Bible, and I started to birth a love for what I was reading and the quest to figure out how do I understand what they're talking about. I fell in love with the quest and the literature itself. And so that led me on a journey to really pursue biblical studies, let alone not just solely reading the New Testament. I wanted to read the Hebrew Bible. And then I found out about other Second Temple Jewish literature. And you're like, okay, some people call this the Deuterocanon, some call it the Apocrypha. Then you got the whole folks with the Dead Sea Scroll. What is going on? Who's the
Mm-hmm.
Qumran community? Or who are the Essenes? And all of that. And so it's why I hold dearly to the conviction. If you truly want to understand Jesus and his mission, his teachings, you have to go through the Hebrew Bible.
Mm-hmm.
He's not doing anything that's detached from that. It's in continuation and bringing it to its fullness so that those who follow him can be incorporated in the story that it's been telling all along. So that's why I care
Yeah.
about the Hebrew Bible.
That's amazing. This podcast is all about me, so I'll relate this to me. Um, no, it's just funny to hear you say that because I had almost an identical trek
Mm,
when
mm,
I was 20. Never really read the Bible before. Didn't really know what was in it. Read the Gospels. Realized that after reading the first, second, and third Gospel, I'm like, wait, these are the same story. Like, learned that for the first
yeah,
time, and then I went back to
yeah.
page one and started reading. And
Yep.
I got really hung up in Exodus, where I was like, they're having an orgy and then killing each other.
You're like, what is happening?
Yeah, yeah. Weird meter is pegging over here. Yeah. Um, so it's good to
Yes.
hear, it's good to hear somebody else had the exact same experience,
Yes.
and then it also, in a weird way, birthed that same love for me as well. Um, what was I going to ask you about? Oh, okay, so about if you want to understand Jesus. Now, this is also this is all going out to, well, I won't name who this person is because maybe they
Hmm.
don't want people to know this. But the
Sure.
seminarian that I was talking to today was also wrestling with this issue of feeling a lot of pressure to be able to kind of convert instantly any Bible story from the Old Testament into a Jesus object lesson.
Sure.
And I
Sure.
wonder how you deal with that issue, how sympathetic you are, and how you kind of tease out methodologically when it's appropriate or not to bring in Jesus into the Old Testament, the
And
study of
man,
the Old
that's
Testament.
yeah, that's a good question. I understand why people have that jerk reaction of like, I gotta find Jesus in it. I've been there. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I totally get it. And at the same time, I am totally content with not talking about Jesus while studying a particular passage in the Hebrew Bible on its own terms because it was written on its own terms.
Hmm.
Can the Spirit do some stuff to, foretell about this, that, and the third, develop patterns that Jesus will later come to relive or recapitulate? Sure, yes. But even Jesus himself had to read these scriptures as they were written. He's
Ooh, that's a
he's read.
good point right there.
Hey, look,
I'm going to
I
quote you
didn't.
on that.
Hey, as my friend Adam would say, I didn't write this. Okay, I'm just going
I
like,
like that.
if he's standing in what is it, the synagogue in Capernaum,
Yep.
doing the Isaiah scroll, what is he articulating? He's articulating something that Isaiah was getting at, but then he's going, also, I've come to bring this to the fullness, and everybody's like, what is he talking about? Ain't this such and such boy? Like, what's going on here? But Jesus had to work through the collection in and of itself to fully even understand. This might ruffle some feathers, but even to understand what he was here to do.
Hmm.
So, what is it? Luke 4, Luke 3 talks about how he had to grow in stature and wisdom,
Yeah, Luke 2:52. He
something like
grew in
that.
stature and
It's
wisdom, and it's a
it's
quote of First
yeah,
Samuel,
yeah. There
of
you
Samuel the
go.
prophet, growing in stature. Yeah.
Come on. So somebody talk to me, right? So you thank you for quoting the direct passage. That's
Yeah.
it. And so you have to go, okay, Jesus has to grow in wisdom. Where is he getting that wisdom from?
Mm,
Oh, a lot of that wisdom comes from these texts.
yeah.
And you go, okay, so in order to have biblical wisdom, you have to understand them on their own terms. And so, with that said, if you're reading a story about Sodom and Gomorrah and you're going, how do I find Jesus in this? My question would be, wait, pause. What's happening in the episode of Sodom and Gomorrah? Like,
Right.
what's going on here? We don't need the Jesus juke this. You got to wrestle with the tension here. To try to bring Jesus in immediately is like trying to eliminate the tension.
Mm,
And it's like, no, no, no. How is the author framing this story? It's as another flood. Literally, there's all these key words and such that
yeah.
are coming from the
Yeah.
flood story.
Yeah.
But instead of water, it's now sulfur and fire coming down, raining down from heaven, yada, yada. Does that mean that that solves all the theological tensions? No. But you don't have to go, now, how do I fit Jesus here?
Hmm.
You can just let that story be as it is, you know?
Yeah. Hey there, if you've benefited from this content at all, please hit the like and subscribe, or subscribe and like, one of those or both of them together on this video. It helps us tremendously with the math algorithm nerd monsters. And I think you're pointing out, another problem that happens when you're trying to, as they say, lift every rock in the Old Testament to see if Jesus is under it,
Sure.
is, you'll just end up, excuse me, you'll end up just leaving out passages because, who's going to preach the drugging and sexual assault of Lot by his two daughters,
Yes. In
and
the
like
very
tell,
next passage.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and then tell me where Jesus was when they were getting their dad drunk and having sex with him. I
Yeah.
mean,
What are we
I
doing?
can see how it contributes to the storyline within which Jesus is a part,
Yes.
but making a
Yes.
Christocentric reading of that passage sounds, I don't know, dicey.
That was a little risque, you know, to say the
Speaking
least.
of weird, yeah, the passage
Yeah,
is weird, and it could get really weird if you try to throw Jesus in there, right?
really, really quickly. And it's like, okay, if you're going to deal with that passage, what is that mirroring in a way? It's mirroring what happens with Ham and Noah
Mm-hmm.
in the tent. There's something that goes down, father's nakedness, and then a child of that. Something happens in the tent, in a covered space, in the same way that now Lot and his daughters are in a covered space of a cave. And then there's some stuff that goes down. And then you didn't ask for all of this, Drew,
No,
but
I love it. You're
we're
dropping
in
them.
our nerdy mode. But Ham, right after Ham and Noah's situation, whatever that was, Noah curses Canaan, who is the father of a nation whom the Israelites will have major conflict with. And in the same way, the two sons that are produced from Lot and his daughters are what is it, the Moabites
And the
and the
Edomites.
Ammonites,
Or Ammonites, yeah,
who
you're right. Yep.
who are two nations whom the Israelites will have conflict with later. And I'm like, this is mirroring it. I don't have to go, okay, so yeah, where does Jesus fit into that? Is
Right.
he
Where is
lying?
the
Is he telling the
cross in
truth?
this? Let's
Like,
see. There was a
so
piece of wood in the back of the cave, and it was cross shaped. Yeah. Yeah, the artificial activity there. And like you said, I get it. I get the energy. I understand why we want to make sense of it through
yeah,
Jesus. But that story, like my low pitch on this one is like, hey, okay, when Jesus is talking to the woman at the well in John 4, should we be thinking to ourselves, man, I hope he just shuts up and moves on and dies and gets resurrected so we can just get to the good stuff, right? Or can we like sit there
yeah,
with him and the
yeah,
woman at the well and say like,
yeah,
yeah, this is all unfolding in its due time, and this was an important conversation in and of itself for that
yeah,
woman and for
yeah,
us and for everybody else.
yeah, yeah.
And that
That's
kind of
good.
the race to salvation is probably the anxiety there that gets us
Mm.
in these weird reading patterns.